Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Unstoppable Mindset. Our podcast has been doing really well. We've been having a lot of fun with it ever since August of 2021. And I really thank you all for listening and for being part of our family. And as I always tell people, if you know of anyone who you think ought to be a guest, let us know, and we'll get to that later on. Today, our guest is from Switzerland, Katrin J. Yuan. And Katrin is a person who, among other things, is the CEO of the Swiss Future Institute. And I'm going to leave it to her to tell us about that when we get to it. She is a executive. She's an executive with a pretty deep background. And again, I don't want to give anything away. I want her to be able to talk about all that. So we'll get to it. But Katrin, I want to thank you for being here and for finding us and for coming on Unstoppable Mindset.
Warm welcome, Michael and dear audience. Thank you so much for having me on Unstoppable Mindset. I'm excited to be here with you. A bit about myself.
Yes, please tell us about you and growing up and all the scandalous things that you don't want anyone to know. No, go ahead. We're here to hear what you have to say.
My cultural background is I'm looking Asian, grown up in Europe and Germany, and then later for my studies in Switzerland, in the French part of Switzerland. And now I'm being here in Zurich. My background is MBA IT Finance. I started with a corporate, then in tech consulting. I was heading 8 departments in my last corporate position there of head IT, head data. Now, to keep it simple and short, I consider myself as an edutainer, community builder, and a connector, connecting the dots between data, tech, and people. I do it on a strategic level as a 6-time board member, and I do it on an operational level for the Swiss Future Institute for 4 universities, being a lecturer and sharing knowledge, fun, and connecting with people in various ways.
Well, what got you started down the road of being very deeply involved with tech? I mean, I assume that wasn't a decision that just happened overnight, that growing up, something must have led you to decide that you wanted to go that way.
It's a mixture, curiosity, excitement. I want to know, and that started with me as a kid, how things work. What's the functionality? And I like to do things differently and do it myself before reading how it should be done. What's the way it should be done? So I followed it.
Yeah, I find reading is a very helpful thing. Reading instruction manuals and all that is very helpful. But at the same time, there isn't necessarily all the information that a curious mind wants. So I appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, totally. There are so many more things. Once you start, it's like one layer after the other. I like to take the layers by layer to go to the core. And I don't avoid asking questions because I really like to understand how things work.
Yeah. And it's a lot more fun and hopefully you get answers. I think a lot of times people who are very technically involved in one thing or another, when you ask them questions, all too often they assume, well, this person doesn't have the technical expertise that I do, so I don't want to give a very complicated answer. And that's all lovely, except that it doesn't answer the question that people like you, and frankly, I have, which is, how do things work? Why do they work? Much less, where do we take them from here, right?
Absolutely. And breaking down complexity, rather simplifying things and tell us in an easy way you would maybe tell kids, your neighbors, and non-tech persons. And at the end of the day, it's the question, what's in for you? What is this for? And what's the value and how you can apply it in your everyday life?
Yeah. I grew up, of course, being blind and encountered a lot of people who were and are curious about blind people. The problem is I usually have an assumption also that if you're blind, you can't do the same things that sighted people can do. And that's usually the biggest barrier that I find we have to break through, or that I have to break through. Because in reality, blindness isn't the issue, it's people's perceptions. And so that's why I mentioned the whole idea that people often underrate people who ask a lot of questions. And the result is that it takes a while to get them comfortable enough to understand we really do want to know, and we really do want you to give us good technical information that we can process and move forward with.
Exactly. And normally in a room full of board members, managers, you call it, you name it, CEOs, investors, usually someone or even the majority is very thankful that finally somebody asks, also dare to ask the simple questions to find a solution. Yeah. And it's not only the what, but I find it interesting also the how you solve it, and to see and do things in a different way from a different diverse perspective. This is very valuable for those seeing and for those seeing in a different way or not seeing and solving it in your own very unique way.
And that's part of the real issue, of course, is that looking at things from different points of view is always so valuable, isn't it?
Absolutely. This is why I also go for diversity in tech leadership boards. Yeah, because for me, I like to say it's no charity case, but a business case.
Yeah. Well, so you've in a sense always been interested in tech, and that I can appreciate, and that makes a lot of sense because that's where a lot of growth and a lot of things are happening. So you went to school, you went to college, you got a master's degree, right?
Yes, correct.
And so what was then your first job that you ended up having in the tech world?
I was in the IT ICT for Vodafone in 8 countries. Last station was with Northern Cyprus. For me, very exciting, yeah, to jump in different roles, also in different areas, seeing the world sponsored by a large company here in
Yeah.
Europe. And that was very exciting for me to jump right into it and learn quickly. I wanted to have this knowledge accelerated and very pragmatic to see many countries, cultures, and also diverse people in many, many means, from language to culture to age to many, many different backgrounds.
So from a technology standpoint, how is Vodafone doing today? I know you've moved on from that, but how is it doing today, or is it? I've heard of Vodafone, but I haven't kept up with it.
That was my very first chapter. So yes, indeed, I moved on, staying in the tech sector, but now I am completely here in Switzerland for another chapter.
And Vodafone is still a very sizable and ongoing company.
It is not in Switzerland, but yet
It's not in
still
Switzerland.
is still in Europe with headquarter in UK, in Germany, and so on. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it, and I was thinking Germany, although I hadn't thought about the UK, but that makes some sense. So you obviously worked to learn a lot and absorb a lot of information, and I like the things that you're talking about. I think people who are really curious and who work at being curious aren't just curious about one thing. And you talked about you're curious about the technology and all the things that you could learn, but you are also very interested in the cultures. And I think that is, and the whole environment. And I think that is so important to be able to do. What kinds of things, if you will, did you find interesting about the different cultures, or what kind of commonalities did you find across different cultures? Because you had the experience to be able to be involved with several, so that must have been a pretty fascinating journey.
Yeah, CEO of a Swiss Future Institute and as university lecturer of 4 universities in Germany as well as in Switzerland, mostly about AI, data analytics, and also as board member. I have several demanding roles, started already in young years. So one of the questions I hear often is, how did you make it and how is the combination? And here my answer is start early, discipline, focus. I'm highly self-motivated, curiosity, as mentioned earlier, in the combination. And I did not expect success to come early. I expected to endure pain, hard work, and to go for it in a mixture of discipline, hard work, step by step, and also to overcome challenges.
Did you find it to be a challenge with any of the cultures that you worked within to be able to be curious and to be able to move forward, or were you pretty much welcomed across the board?
It's a mixture. It started with the obvious, the language. So when I was, for instance, on northern Cyprus, that's the Turkish-speaking part, not the Greek part, which is in the EU. Uh, I accepted the opportunity given by the company at that time to learn Turkish. That was
There you
amazing
go.
for me. Yeah, as I felt like if I'm the guest, the least I can do is adapt and giving, showing my respect and openness towards a new culture. And for me, culture starts with a language.
Mm-hmm.
With language, you reach not only the people, but you really understand. As there are so many, and those of you who speak more than one language, you might have find it especially uh, comparing different expressions, emotions, typical expressions in different languages is not only translating, it's really understanding those people. Yeah, and that for me, definitely super exciting. It was a challenge, but a very welcome one, embracing that challenge. And for me, it was like, hey, let's do an experiment. Being an adult, learning a complete new language, not like English, German, French, and those
Yeah.
usually relatively close to each other, so related ones, but a completely new, such as Turkish. So nobody spoke Turkish in my friends' neighborhood, closer family as we are not. But I thought that hey, let's simply start, and I started by learning eight uh, hours per week, so really intense, including the Saturday. So it was only doable that way. To give it a serious try to bridge and be open towards different cultures.
Well, the other part about it is, in a sense, it sounds like you adopted the premise or the idea that you didn't really have a choice because you lived there, or at least that's a great way to motivate. And so you spent the time to learn the language. Did you become pretty fluent in Turkish then?
I was there like 5 months. The first 3 months, it was rather enduring pain and
Yeah.
hard work without having any success. So I didn't get it. I didn't understand anything. Though I had every week the 8 hours of Turkish. And it took 3 months, and that's super interesting for me to perceive. Like, I love experiments and I love experimenting also with myself included. That is, it seems to be not linear, but rather jumping. So you have
Mm.
all the investments in the first, where you don't see any immediate effect. Well, after the first 3 months, there was a jump. And I remember clearly the first moment where I got it, where I understood something. And later on, learning intensely, even understood some sort of jokes and etc. And there, the meetings were all in Turkish, so it really helped to adapt to that one and get what they say.
So until you got to the point where you could sort of understand the language, how did you function? Did you have somebody who interpreted, or how did that work?
Well, they speak English as well. And of course, they adapted to me, such as to the other experts being there as well. Yeah.
Did did you find though that once you started having some effective communication in the language that they liked that and that made you more accepted?
They were surprised because at that time I was the only one from the expats manager sent there, who really accepted the whole education package. I thought like, okay, it's free, it's education. Let's definitely accept it and give it a serious try. Having the 8 hours per week. So several were quite surprised that I did it and that I'm interested in learning a new language as an adult. Where you could have said, no, that's enough. Let's all stay in our usual. The simplest way, which is let's keep it and do it all in English, what we already can speak.
Mm-hmm. But they had to feel more at home when you started speaking their language a little bit. I remember in college, I took a year of Japanese. It just seemed fascinating. And I like to listen to shortwave. I'm a ham radio operator. So I oftentimes would tune across stations and I would find Radio Japan and listen to broadcasts. And then I took a year and I've been to Japan twice as a speaker talking about the World Trade Center and so on. And although I didn't become in any way fluent with the language, I was able to pick up enough words, especially after having been there for a few days, that I could at least know what's going on. So I appreciate exactly what you're saying. It makes it a whole lot more fun when people do relate to you, which is so cool. So I think that's a good thing. Where did you go after Cyprus?
I went back to Switzerland.
Familiar language.
Yeah, from the French and to the German-speaking part in Switzerland. Also with French, it's more or less the same. I learned a large part also per university and frankly per TV, watching television. If you first started, didn't get any of those jokes, felt quite stupid. And then one day you really break the wall and then it's going all the way up and you simply get it. You live it, you're right in. And you understand the culture and those people, and they will feel that you're embracing it, that you are not only polite or only there for a temporary of time and then you're gone.
Yeah. You demonstrate that you are really interested in them and curious about them, as I said, and that tends to definitely make you more relatable and make you more appreciated by the places where you are. Did you go to any other places where you had to deal with any other foreign languages that you didn't speak well initially?
Michael, can we make a short break here?
Sure, hold on. Okay. So I'd like to go ahead and continue in, obviously learning about you and so on. And I know we talked a little bit about other places where you've been and so on, but you've got a lot that you have done. So you work a lot with CEOs, you work a lot with investors and board members, and a lot of these people have a lot of different kinds of personalities. So what is your perception of people? What was your perception of working with all those people? And how do you deal with all of that going forward? Because everybody's got their own thoughts.
Indeed. And in that context, what is normal? How do you perceive and how are you perceived by others? That was a question which raised my curiosity, by time. It was not clear from the beginning. And for me, I found my answer in what is normal. It's super relative from only what you perceive and got to know, taught by your parents as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, looking Asian, looking different, as a woman, young, you're looking different. And that combination in Switzerland, it's yeah, it raised some questions and got me reflecting upon that question. Yes, and it is all how you deal and see and apply that difference and make that difference to be a value for yourself and for others.
Mm-hmm. You bring up an interesting point, though. You talk about what is normal. And so, what is normal? How do you deal with that?
Normal is what you think is normal. There's no real normal. The so-called norms, does it fit to you, or you will make them fit to you? And you are unique in that setup, yeah. Like what is normal considering beauty standards? It is what you use to know, yeah, based on culture, based on your direct environment, based by your family. What you see is what you get, yeah, and based on some scientific stuffs like relatively high symmetric in your face, but not too much asymmetric, yeah, just the right mixture. Yeah. And so I learned to define, instead of being defined all the time, to define myself what is normal to me, and to be very aware that the normal is quite relative in my perception.
Did you find that there were times that you had to sort of change your view of what was normal because of circumstances? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I respect it so much also with your fantastic story yourself, Michael, where I can only say chapeau, how you make your way all the way up. And it's more than respectful. You have my admiration for that one. For me, it was definitely through traveling, seeing myself, not so much as a small kid. I perceived like, hey, we are all normal. Yeah, there was no difference as a small kid. But latest for me, when you got a bit older as a kid, in between kid and becoming adult, um, also from the environment, raising questions of how you appear, whether you appear differently from kids and so on. Yeah, the question was brought to me, so I had to deal with it in the one or other way, and I learned it is interesting if you are finding yourself. It's not a point that you know in black white. Okay, that's me, but it's rather walking the whole path with all the stones, hicks and up and downs, becoming you in all its essence and normal. It was defines you. And I like to challenge myself wherever in all these bias everyone has naturally. It makes us human. That's the way that I at least challenge myself to open that quick few seconds box again after the very first impression, which is built unconsciously, and some good moments and valuable relationships appeared. Not from the first moment, but because I challenged it. And even if we didn't like, for example, each other from the first moment, but then we gave it another opportunity, and then even friendships were built, yeah, with a second and third glance. And this is where I invite you to think about your own normal and to find and define yourself, not letting it be a standard defined by others.
Mm-hmm. I have ever since September 11th, I always hear people saying, and I reacted to it internally. We got to get back to normal. People hate getting out of their comfort zone, oftentimes, and that's in a sense so very frustrating. But I kept hearing people say after September 11th, we got to get back to normal, and I finally realized that the reason that I didn't like that statement was normal will never be the same again. We can't get back to normal because normal is going to be different. And if we try to get back to where we were, then the same thing's going to happen again. So we do need to analyze, investigate, explore, and recognize when it's need to move on and find if you will, for the moment at least, a new normal.
Absolutely, I'm with you. Yeah. What's normal for you, Michael?
Yeah, and what's normal for me isn't normal for you. I think what's normal for me today isn't what it used to be. So for me today, normal is I do get to travel and speak. But when I'm home, I have a dog and a cat. Normal changed for me a couple of years ago when my wife passed away. So it was a matter of shifting and recognizing that I needed to shift, that the mindset couldn't be the same as it was pre November 12th of 2022. And so it is important to be able to adapt and move on. So I guess for me, normal in one sense is be open to change.
That's beautifully said. Be open to change.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we shouldn't get so locked in to something that we miss potential opportunities that change or that adapting to different environments will bring us.
Totally. And you yourself give yourself all the opportunities you have to evolve over time. You will not be exactly, and that's good the way it is, the same person. Yeah, because environment change, all the factors change, and we humans are highly adaptive. Yeah, this is underestimated by ourselves many times. Yeah, but we are, and we make the best out of the situation. And uh, especially with regard to hard moments, they are really, really, really hard, and nobody likes them while being in that moment. But looking back and being overcoming it afterwards, looking back, uh, I like to say, when do you really grow? It's in the hard times when you grow. This is where you endure pain, but you become better, bigger, more resilient afterwards.
Right. Very, very much so. Well, in your case, um, growing up, working, and being in all the different environments that you have you ever had an unexpected moment, a hard moment that you had to deal with, and what was that, and how did you deal with it?
Sure, just sharing one earlier moment. I had an accident. I was on my way to dancing course and all chilly fun. Made myself pretty on the day, thinking only on superficial, beautiful moments, partying, and so on. And then it crashed on the road. And in a matter of seconds, life can be over. So I woke up in the hospital in the intensive care, uh, in that unit where you only find the hard cases, those, were really not beautiful to look at. Yeah, I find myself, and I was like, that was definitely a very hard lessons I learned in early years. So I had to relearn everything and had to look 2 weeks long at a white wall with an ugly picture on it. And I had plenty of time to think about myself and the world and what the heck I should do with the remaining time, and also my perception of normal, of wishes, of expectations, of different perspectives, and my expectation on life. Yeah.
A wall with an ugly picture. Did you ever come to appreciate the picture?
It was still ugly after 2 weeks.
Just checking. So, so you chose not to let that become part of your normal, which is fine. I hear you. Well, but you adapted and you moved forward from that, and obviously you learned more about yourself, which is really so cool that you chose to use that as a learning experience. And all too often, people tend not to do that. Again, we don't do a lot of self-analysis and tend to try to move on from those things. But you did, which is admirable by any standard. Well, one of the things that I'm curious about is that you have a fairly good social media following. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who would ask this, what would you advise for people who want to build their brand? What did you learn along the way? And what would you advise people to do if they want to build their own brand and grow?
I have over 60,000 views, which is not bad for a non-celebrity and a simple officer, worker, academic worker here in Switzerland. And I like to invite people to think, imagine you were a product. What are you standing for? And don't try to cover your weaknesses. It's the unique you as a combination of all of your signs. I like to speak about the 360-degree you. And starting, and I know statistically there are a bit more women who are a bit concerned about, hey, how much should I really give and get over visibility, and is it still in a professional way, and I don't want to waste my time and so on. Somebody told me, and I find this idea very simple and good. People talk about you either way.
Yeah.
Also, if you leave a room, either you let it the way in a passive way, so accepting it, or you decide one day, and this is what I did, actively influence it. So I like to, rather, if I may have a choice, actively influence and have some take on my life, my decisions, my normal, the doings, the happenings. And this starts with a perception. In our world, uh, allow me, it is very simple. What you see is what you get. Yeah. So the visibility, if you can use it, especially here now, yeah, with all the social media channels from LinkedIn to Insta to YouTube, what you have in place, use it systematically for your business, not as a, I don't want to waste my time. And you don't need to open up to everything, your private life. If you want to keep that, that's all good. You can just open up enough to build up your brand for business. Yeah. And for me, it's really, really going. Definitely remonetize and open up for business. And so that our clients in Switzerland, Liechtenstein, in Germany, and Austria, in the DACH region, we call it, find us and thankful for that.
Interesting. And I like something that you say, which is you don't need to open up your private lives. We get too nosy, and we get too many people who put too many pieces of information about their private lives. And unfortunately, that's just not a productive thing to do. Although so many people do it. In this country now, we're seeing a number of athletes whose homes are being broken into, and you can trace the reason that it's even possible back to a lot of social media. They're saying they're not going to be there, or in some cases they can't necessarily avoid it. It doesn't need to be social media when you've got sports figures who are playing in games and all that. But we focus too much on private lives rather than real substance. And unfortunately, too many people also who are celebrities want to talk about their private lives. And I don't tend to think that is overly productive, but everybody has their own choices to make, right? So that's
everybody has their own choices to make.
Yeah.
I recommend, if you like, stay with them consistently so you feel comfortable. How much you open the door is starting ultimately with you. I like to say in that context, you are ultimately responsible for all the things you do, but also with all the things you don't do. Yeah. And that's totally fine as long as it's very much, and that is something you will feel. And that's about you. Yeah. And social media and visibility and the business side, the professional side of using your, whether employer branding, your personal branding, all the stuff, this is controlled by you, how much you give. Of course, you can sense how much, depending on how much you give, how much will come back. Yeah. And if you don't feel like posting all the time, also with 40-degree fever out of a bed, don't do it. It might be not sensible in your case and not giving you back the outcome, the impact, the real consequence and effects it has. Yes, totally.
Well, social media hasn't been with us all that long, and I think we're still really learning how to best be involved with social media. And of course, that's an individual choice that everyone has to make. But Facebook is only 20 years old, for example. And so we're going to be learning about this, and we're going to be learning about the impact of social media for a long time to come, I suspect.
Absolutely. And nowadays, everything merged on the next level with AI. The perception, what you get is what you see. Really, fake news is only the beginning in text, in visuals, speaking of pictures, and in videos, which is nothing else than a row of visual pictures in moving. Yeah. So our generation and the next, from Alpha to Gen Z, X, Y, over and bridging generations, we will have to learn how to deal with it responsibly, both being potentially one of the actors in, so being a creator, creating your own content, and on the other side, accepting, seeing, resonating, interacting with other content. Yeah.
Mhm.
What is real? What is fake? How do you deal with it critically and responsibly for business, for society? Yeah, because whenever you do something, somebody else will see it. In that sense, every one of us is a role model. So your behavior is not ultimately only what you say, but also what you do. Yeah, measure me in what I do, not what I say. And yeah, and others will see you and observe, and that will have an effect if you want or not. And therefore, I am for a responsible way behaving, reflecting, and carry that on, spreading that information. Yeah, it all starts with you.
I believe it's all too important to recognize it's due and judge by what I do, not by what I say. I think that is so important, and one of the biggest lessons that we can learn from social media or anything. And it's nothing new. It's just that uh, now it is such more a visible kind of lesson that we need to learn, because it's all about actions, and they do speak a lot louder than words, whether we like to think so or not.
Yeah, totally. And you said it, Michael. It's nothing new. Yeah, it's not reinvented, but yeah, it's all transparent, too much information flooded by all channels, all these voices and people, experts and not, commenting, resonating, multiplied, copied, bringing to other dimensions. And it's so easy. Yeah, the real ones and the other ones. Yeah, so it's upon you to deal with it responsibly.
Yeah. Well, you have been associated with a number of boards. You've dealt with lots of board members. You're the CEO of a company and so on. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on the whole concept of how do we work to make boards and board members more inclusive and more diverse, or how do we open boards up to perhaps different things that they haven't experienced before?
That's a very good one, which means a lot to me personally. I like to say it's not a charity case, but a fact matters numbers business case. So simple. That is, if you have, let's say, 10 people, high personalities in one room, a decision is very, very easily made if you all think, look, behave the same with the same skills, background, experiences, and cultural wise. Definitely, you will come to one decision quickly. But is this ultimately the best decision for the company and for your future? Yeah? And have you shared all these thoughts from a different perspective, from a different angle? This implies a certain way, also with efforts, with some time, yeah, not only easy peasy, but once you challenge yourself, you really grow. You really grow and come to an ultimately better decision, worthwhile, a more valuable perspective, yeah, and thinking of something you have never thought yourself, but another fraction does. And ultimately, the other voice is not only one minority, speaking of an easy example of 1 to 9 makes 10, but scientifically, we speak here about the 33% and more, so more than 3, 4 people in a room. It would make sense to really have a strong voice here, not only the one exceptional voice, but really a discussion among diverse peers reaching to the ultimate outcome in the best interest of a company.
How do we get people to adopt that kind of mindset and expand boards, though, to make that happen? Because all too often, people are locked into their own way. Well, we want board members and we want people who think as we do. And we don't want to really change, which is getting back to what we talked about before with normal.
I'm definitely with you, Michael. And if we had one short sentence answer on that one, I would be the first to raise the hand. Give me that solution. It's very hard to force externally. It's ultimately the best way is if you really come to that and you get convinced yourself by your own experience, by seeing, observing, by being open-minded enough to learn from others. Yeah, that is not with age, with success, with power, with hierarchy, you name it, with title, with salary package, that you find one day, okay, I learned enough. I'm successful enough. I'm rich enough. I can afford and do what I wish means, and I'm not interested consciously or unconsciously in having another maybe challenging other view which threatens or challenges myself or which makes it a little bit more uncomfortable, but for the ultimate sake of getting to a better result. So there's a science dimension, there's a psychological, a cultural dimension, and definitely that's an individual one. But I learned the greatest people, men and women, like the really successful ones, they are quite on a steep learning curve wherever they stand. And the really good ones, they want to become even better. Yeah, this is from knowledge. Learning never ends. And this is also for openness, looking. The ball is round from the 360-degree perspective. And this is ultimately also, as I said at the beginning, the business case to know from science, okay, if I go alone, I might get the point quite quickly. Or if everybody is a little copy of you, it makes it so easy, isn't it? But if you really challenge, go through, this is where you bring yourself and the others and the whole team, and again, the value of your company and a listed company, um, your innovation, your value of the ultimate company much, much further than it was yesterday. And this is where maybe how much can we afford looking at business as competition, looking at the latest technology, all these, and also over culture and over borders. Yeah, how much can we afford to stay the way we are because we were that successful and maybe also privileged the last 20 years? I doubt so. So this is again plenty of real facts, numbers, arguments. Look at the statistics. It's a clear business case where we go and the smartest one goes first, and state an example by yourself. Yeah, go through it, and then you experience it yourself. The value out of difference and diverse in true means by living it and allowing it in your own circle.
The the question that sort of comes to mind, and it's a hard one to really answer, I think, but if you're on a board with a very strong leader or a very strong person, and you see that they're not necessarily willing to deal with diversity or real inclusion, how do you help them understand the value of doing that and becoming more diverse or becoming more inclusive in the way they think?
By raising questions in
Okay.
a polite, respectful way, you can do a lot. Everything you do is better than doing nothing. Simply accepting on and in a passive way. I think everything else is definitely worth to try, fail, try, do better, and try in a row. Repetition is also something which is psychologically, therefore we have all these repetition jingles and advertising to some extent very useful, effective. So if you again may hear it not maybe only from one person, but from more than the 33%, and then you might hear it from your best buddy, you might hear it from peers, but you one day come and accept, at least question it yourself, yeah, raising that question, and you really want to get better. As we said at the beginning, Michael beautifully said, accept change or change what is normal, yeah, and we are highly adaptive again as humans, so allow yourself to grow. There are two ways, either or. If you should ever meet somebody who is rather not that open to it, so there are two ways, and which will show by time. Yeah, the one is you are people only like to change when change becomes necessary. This is where an event happens, yeah, a very hard event, and where you will have face tremendous consequence. So you must uh, have a change, yeah, and it's painful. And the
Yeah.
other is before, out of being convinced, yeah, um, uh, touching the question before, how much can we afford to stay the way we are, like forever, just
Yeah.
because it has been like this in the last 20 years? Uh, and I rather invite change doesn't happen overnight. Yes, that's true, but continuous and little ones, rather the hard cut at the end, and rather from yourself, interior and intrinsically motivated, rather than being forced only by outside. That's way better. And smart people, yeah, are open, listening, learning, and therefore do some effort, make some effort yourself. Normally, it pays back 10 times.
One of the best quotes I've ever heard that I really like, and I think it really ties in here, comes from the person who was our 35th president, who's now passed away, Jimmy Carter. He once said, "We must adjust to changing times while holding to unwavering principles." And my point in bringing that up is that change doesn't need to be that you have to sacrifice basic life principles. I think so all too often we don't necessarily learn some of those life principles as well as we should, but change is a good thing. And we do need to adjust to changing times. And it doesn't mean that we have to sacrifice the basics of life that we've grown up with and that we experience.
Beautifully said. Exactly. I totally agree. And to every new year, the new year resolution, stop smoking, becoming more sportive, all of a sudden, all these long lists of changes and wishes, potential achievement and potential failures. Scientifically, I'm a bit nerdy from the person. Yeah, for me, nerdy is positive. It shows that rather than going for the big hard cut change, use all these small steps and allow yourself to make these small steps towards change. And habits, this is also shown and proven, habits do not come overnight. They are not accepted. Whether, yeah, it's getting early bird, becoming all of a sudden early bird because, yeah, you want to belong to that 5 a.m. breakfast club or something. Whatever it is, yeah, make a combination over time in small steps and reward yourself. Also, if you make a small step towards change, yeah, that's where magic happens. So you keep it over 2, 3, 4 months, and there become a good habit over time.
But also keep in mind why you want to make the change. That is, what you don't change just to change, you change because there's a reason. And it's important to understand whatever it is, the reason for wanting to change.
Having a goal and visualize it as much as you can. It's a strong one. And ultimately, do it for yourself, not for your partner, not because of somebody else expecting. Do it for yourself, yeah? Becoming healthier, working with a certain amount of discipline towards your marathon or whatever it is in in your life situation. Yeah, definitely. Because if you don't have a goal, don't expect to ever land there. It would be a pure accident, and that's rather impossible. Yeah, but having a goal, you dramatically enhance your probability to reaching that one step by step.
Yep, absolutely. So you know what? Let's take a minute and play a game just for fun. Um, if you were a song, which one would it be?
A classic one. Up to a certain moment, there will be a surprise and a mixture rather into the more modern, maybe new classic one, and a big bang to the end.
Do you have a particular one in mind?
As I love playing piano myself, I have two pianos at home, and I like to play from notes sheets, but also make my own compositions. I have one in mind, which is rather my own composition, starting from the classic, from the known ones such as Chopin, but going into a rather individual one at the end. Yeah, it's a mixture.
Cool. Well, you've obviously been around a lot and so on. What's the worst advice you ever received?
Stay the way you are and come back in 5 years. You're not ready yet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I simply didn't accept it. Yeah, I think you're ready when once you feel ready, and that's not you're too young for it, or you are not ready because these things are lacking. And get the first reference and get the first ones who trust yourself and start trusting yourself. Yeah? Going the first part, whether it's the first leadership role, whether it's the first investment role, whether it's the first board membership role, whether it's becoming you, following your dreams, making your own company become reality. All these, I'm convinced at the end of the day, you are the ultimate producer of your life. So what are you waiting for? For me, it was the accident wake up call for me, where I thought like, okay, 2 weeks staring at that ugly wall with that picture, that made me somehow aware of my time. So I somehow subjectively really accelerate. I always think like, hey, I don't have enough time. Let's make and really use the time given. And so, yeah, it's all about you. Define yourself rather than letting others to define who
I
you
think
should
that's really the operative part. Define yourself. You're the only one who can really do that. And you're the only one who can know how well you're doing it. So I think you're absolutely right.
And
Well,
nobody knows you better. Nobody should know you better
right.
than yourself because you spend all your time, you know, all these ugly, weak, and really strong, really beautiful sides of yourself. You spend all the time, your whole life, if you like it or not, with you. So some people are rather passive or with regard to responsibility. Yeah, I would like to, but somehow I'm waiting somebody else who pushes me, who give me, throw me that ball in my way, who tell me, or who give me this one recommendation I was waiting a long time for. No, it should be you. You
Mm-hmm.
know yourself the best way. Start making use out of it.
Yeah. And you should really work to make sure you know yourself better than other people do. It makes your life a whole lot better if you can do that. Well,
Definitely.
let me ask this. If you could go back in time, what would you do?
I started quite early and I've had some thoughts about skills, about what I could do, what I'm good at and what I wish. Yeah. All that. And at some point I didn't dare to speak out. I accepted a lot and I was actually quite silent for a long time. And in private life, I'm rather introvert. When they see me on stage, as a speaker, as a lecturer at universities and so on, people tend to think I'm extrovert, but in private life, I'm quite introvert. Looking back, maybe starting even earlier in a stronger pace and a faster pace, being more aware and not covering and myself in silence, like in good moments, whether it's a meeting or in a lesson, if you know a good answer, speak out. If you
Mm-hmm.
know a good question, speak out. Dare to speak out for yourself and for others. This took me some time to find my voice, many years, but now I somehow finally found it. for myself, and I dare to speak out for myself and for others, to make a little bit of change and dare to make things differently. So it has ultimately your individual impact, your outcome, your own responsible line. So this is something I would have wished for me and also for others. Believe in yourself, trust in yourself, speak out earlier. Whenever you see, and there are plenty opportunities. I'd like to finish on that one. It's like a muscle. It's not
Hmm.
born, but rather you can train it. Also, that leadership skills or that entrepreneurial skills or to the skills to deal with difficult situation as you overcame dramatically, wonderfully, Michael. Yeah, as everyone might face over a lifetime individually with his and hers. Um, Face it, grow with it, become better, yeah, and share it with others. So you push, pull, and get good people on your side. And it's not only you suffering, but the ultimate outcome is so much more um, than the one moment which was hard. So believe in yourself.
What's one thing that you really wish people would see that maybe they don't?
The beauty and difference.
Yeah.
Think about it in all its means a bit deeper, and I dearly invite you. It starts with the looks, yeah, with the automatic, subconsciously, quickly done judging others. It's so easy, and yes, we know it's only human, but knowing about yourself, it's about freedom, and with freedom comes responsibility. And also knowing about your limitations and knowing about your weak spots helps you really a lot to grow over time. Knowing you is not only knowing you how to do the small talk when the sunny weather, everybody can be a leader or do something in a good means. Yeah, it's very, very easy. But I talk about rough, stormy weather when it comes to really tough situations, when it comes to darkness and different means, then observe yourself. How do you behave? And many, even adults, they don't know, they can't say, or they totally freak out or give up, or some ways. Challenge yourself. Where are your limits? Have you never tried your limits before because you didn't swim out into the sea and see how much you can really swim? Well, better try out. You will find out and get to know yourself in all your dimension. This is definitely something.
Yeah.
The beauty and difference, accepting, and this is not only finger pointing to others, it starts with you. Yeah, because you are different, I bet you are, in some ways. If it's not looking, yeah, being too old, too young, too man, too woman, too beautiful, too ugly, yeah, too fat, too skinny, and all these, it's maybe your language, your cultural, your skills, your different background. Maybe you're the new one, yeah, and maybe you are different in all beautiful ways. It is possible to be different. So allowing difference, seeing, even inviting it to your circle is something uh, of tremendous value once you open the door and you nurture it over time. I wish more people could see it and use it for a positive impact in this world.
I have been a firm believer pretty much my whole life that life's an adventure and we have to embrace it. We have to live it to the fullest. And when we do, we're much better for it. One of the things that it does for us is it makes us, by the definition of this podcast, more unstoppable. What makes you unstoppable?
Life is an adventure. I completely agree with that sentence. I like to say for me, it's also one day I saw it's like one big game. Either you don't play or I play and want to win it. Whereas I think there can be several who be the winners, not only one. It's not a one man, one woman show. Yeah, it's the team, it's the community, it's the effort. What makes you unstoppable? It starts for me, definitely with your mind,
Mhm.
unstoppable mind in every means, not with your body, because the body, the physics is limited. Yeah, but our mind, spirit, brain. And what you feel here in your heart and what you have in your head is this ultimately you changing, evolving over time, becoming you. And this makes me unstoppable, knowing, and I'm on the way. It's not a point, but rather a long, long path, a marathon. Knowing me, the skills, knowing what you have overcome, Michael, over time, everything. Why shouldn't you achieve and do and get ultimately to your next goal? Because you, looking back, have achieved so much already, becoming stronger and stronger. If we go back to the simplified game, if it was a video game, you get to the next level, not only getting to the next level, you're becoming more stronger. Yeah, this is becoming you. And I believe that you are the ultimate producer. It starts in knowing, trusting, believing in you, speaking out and helping not only yourself, but ultimately pushing others. As a community, we share many things, which when shared becomes multiplied much, much more worth, such as visibility, value, knowledge, trust, and community and connections. All these wonderful things, different than a cake. If you share it, it becomes more. Yeah, so I don't see you are alone. I see you're not an island, you're not alone. Come with us, follow and grow with us on the journey, becoming ultimately you, and you will be unstoppable your
And I,
way.
and I think that's a great way to end this conversation, because I think that you cited it and said it so well and eloquently that the reality is people can be more unstoppable, but they need to take the responsibility to make that happen. And if they do, they'll be better for it. So, Katrin, I want to thank you again for being here. And I want to thank everyone who listens to this for being with us today. This has been a fun podcast. It's been a great adventure. And I really appreciate having the opportunity to keep Katrin busy for, my gosh, over an hour now. And it's getting to be bedtime over in Switzerland. So thank you for being here. But for all of you, hope you've enjoyed this. I hope that you will give us a 5-star review wherever you are listening to this podcast or watching it. And also, if you know of anyone else who ought to be a guest, we'd certainly like you to let us know. Love to get your thoughts about the podcast. Feel free to email me at michaelhi, michaelhi at accessibe, accessibe.com, or go to our podcast page, www.michaelhingson.com/podcast. Michael Hingson is spelled michaelhingson.com/podcast. Katrin, if people want to reach out to you, how would they be able to do that?
LinkedIn, Insta, YouTube. You find me, Google me.
What's your LinkedIn ID, your handle on LinkedIn?
Katrin J. Yuan, Swiss Future Institute. Opportunities don't happen. We create them. Stay, follow, and grow with us. Thank you.
There you go. Well, again, I hope you all have enjoyed this. And Katrin, one last time, I want to really thank you for being here. I appreciate you coming on, and we really value all that you had to say. So thank you very much.